So I wanted to do this properly and introduce our author and healer and teacher and martial artist and visual artist, and she's basically a wonderful polymath and a kind, decent, caring, righteous human being. Longtime friend of mine. We met back in 2003, did we say?
I think so.
It's circa. Luz Emacañas Madrigal. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Luz.
Thank you.
And we are here to celebrate you and this, I think, what is a monumental achievement in your life story, your memoir, your first official, storybook title through your publishing company.
Yes.
It's not self-published. She has a publishing company. Big difference. Anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to Luz.
Okay, so I wanted to do a land acknowledgement to acknowledge the First Nations of this land, the Erie, the Kaskaskia, and the Mississauga. So, gotta acknowledge the land that we are all occupying and to ask and receive the blessings of the ancestors. And
so we were talking about you doing a reading, and I believe you picked out a couple of things to share.
I did. Let's hope my tongue agrees with me, because there's some foreign languages in here. Okay, yes. So this is the book, Martial Love, and I am reading the chapter entitled Dancing with Death. And I'm not going to start at the beginning, I'm starting more in the middle. Gingerly, I made my way over the section of unmarked graves to where he was buried. A crude wooden cross scrawled with the number of the plot staked in the ground as his marker. I asked him, "Você está vendo? Você viu como ele lhe tratou? Até a morte, rapaz. E quem está com você ainda? Eu. Todo mundo está no evento e você está aqui sozinho. Vamos ter nossa roda aqui mesmo. Você e eu. Vamos jogar. Are you seeing? You see how he treated you? Until the death, man. And who is still with you? Me. Everyone is at the event, and you are here alone. We are going to have our own roda, you and me. Let's play." Then I played capoeira on his grave. I swayed, kicked, jumped, and laughed. Then the absurdity of it all hit me. I broke down in tears. As much as I tried to find the silver lining, I was still so angry and disappointed. The worst part of the whole saga wasn't, the worst part was that the whole saga wasn't over. I was going to have to find the strength, the financial means to return in 2 years to the exact same spot to dig him out. The hardest part was trusting that his remains would still be in the ground, undisturbed when I got back. It was all too much for me to think about. I hadn't really begun to process the past 24 hours. As I left the cemetery, I felt something accompany me. A heavy weight sat upon my shoulders. Initially, I couldn't tell if it was O Marido or another lost soul, but his voice became louder and more frequent in my head. O Marido and I began to have conversations as vivid as when he was alive. We would even argue back and forth, laughing and reminiscing. At one point, I thought I was losing my mind. What worried me most was how involved O Marido was going to be in my life. On the upside, I knew he would protect and guide me. On the downside, he was going to try to control me like he did when he was alive. They say souls are in death as they are in life, which was a scary thought when it came to O Marido. I knew he was going to hang around for as long as he felt he needed to, so I better get used to his presence. At the same time, I had to continue to pray for him and encourage him to keep ascending into the higher realms of consciousness and move on to his next incarnation. One thing was certain when dancing with the dead. I had to move with grace. O Marido would either assist or hinder my life. So that is one thing.
And we talked about a poem.
Yes, right? Yes. This is my favorite poem. It's in the chapter called Whirling, and it's entitled The Alchemist. Lord, Grant me more patience with the slow burning process of converting my pain to gold. Lovers I have had, but the one that eludes me is my beloved. I see you in one, smell you in another. Does the remedy I seek lie in a rare flower that does not even exist? Why have you dispersed your essence in so many flowers in which my curiosity leads to disappointment? Please reveal the elixir that heals my ailing heart, or help me to accept the mystery of this alchemical medicine.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And then, if it's okay with everybody, I'm gonna ask Lou some questions about the book. And some great substantial questions, because this is a substantial piece of work. I've read it twice, 2 iterations of it. I believe that it's an epic piece of work. It's so intimate, and it's just heavy. It's like your life story and your journey is like, for me, it's breathtaking. It's like, wow. I told you it left me feeling both times like I read someone's war stories, you know. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, not being liked, upsetting friends and family members, are potentially big risks when telling your authentic and personal story, which you did. Why did you choose to take the risk?
Because of the heaviness of my book, and the things that I encountered or endured, it was weighing like heavily on my soul, to the point where it was making me sick. In some ways, like I'd lose my voice for months on end, literally, like for 4 months at a time. Like I would lose my voice. And
As in you were hoarse, or like you really?
Yeah, like couldn't. I could talk, but it was hoarse.
Like you were talking.
Yeah. And I had like a cough, and I know it was all throat chakra type stuff, because if your chakras are blocked, throat chakra, you lose your voice. So it was mainly that, and because my husband was murdered, and I pretty much started writing the book the day I was on the plane to ID his body, because I had a lot of PTSD, and I was afraid that I was gonna die. So everything was just really heightened, and I'm like, okay, I need to tell this story before someone kills me, before I die, before he takes me on to the other side. I felt urgency to tell it from my voice.
So it was a catharsis in a way, but you needed to lift this weight off your shoulders. Do you, after you wrote it, or now that you've published it, or maybe both, because maybe there's levels, do you feel lighter? Do you feel like you've set the weight down?
Yes, definitely. And also, it's been kind of crazy that once I put it out in the world and then got over my anxiety of people actually reading it, because you're all excited, like you want people to purchase it, and then that's the first step, buy it. Whether or not you read it is another thing. But if people purchase it and then buy, and then read it, ideally, then, as an artist, but also just as a person, just the fear of being judged, especially revealing, some pretty dark stuff.
Well, I want to ask you about that too in a second. But I want to piggyback on the first question, because in particular, in this story, in portions of it, matter of fact, more than once, because I would say this not only happened in Brazil, but in Mexico and in New York, you stood up to men men of certain positions who perceived you as a threat, and the risks more than one time and one place included not just life, but like, it wasn't just life and death, it was like life after death as well, because of some of the spiritual nature and context of some of these people in their practices. Is there anything else beside just the urgency and the need? Or was it just the urgency and the need because the risk was greater? There were dangerous repercussions. It wasn't just risking.
There still can be.
Well, right, but it wasn't just like you might piss some people off. It was life and death, potential life and death consequences. And you decided to do it anyway.
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't concerned. I think I was more concerned before than I am now. I used to have, it would just kind of make my PTSD worse, like this fear that, like, I'm gonna die, like, I have to put this out because, I might get hurt because of it. But I think vindicating myself, I felt that I had to vindicate myself that even if I die, I'll still have the last word, because if I die, the book's still going to be here. The book will speak for me, and that realization that it's out in the world and it's actually in people's hands and people are reading it and they can judge me or not, or at least have an understanding. And I think ultimately, not just for those reasons, but really, the book is dedicated to my cubs, and I want understanding from them and forgiveness from them first. And so if I die, at least they could go and read it, because my cubs haven't read it. Oh. They've read drafts or even pieces of it, but they haven't read it front to cover, especially the latest iteration they haven't read, which also kind of answers your question about not being liked. I had to take the risk of the two most precious people that I did all of that I did in the book, with my cubs in mind, that they might be hurt by me revealing such intimate details of our life. But as we've said, in other conversations that we had, they gave me basically their blessing. They didn't read the book, but they're not thrilled about it, but they're not going to stop me. And they support me. So.
Well, that's the most important part.
Yeah, that's the, and in time, as they grow up and mature and process all that we experienced, they'll come around to it when they're ready, when the universe presents, the time.
So is it safe to say that not only writing the story, but choosing to release it has brought you a sense of peace?
Definitely. I think it was interesting that very soon after, it was out in the world, my baby daddy and I had started having conversations on the phone, and we haven't talked. We weren't until now homies, but on the phone, cackling like old times, being reminded of why we even liked each other in the first place, why we even had kids together in the first place, which was really refreshing. And I was like, wow, Allah, God, the universe, what? I know everything's connected, and I know that is a direct result of me telling the story, and also not pointing fingers, not placing blame.
Yeah.
Which is another, when I wrote the book, I use archetypes, so I don't name names. They're all just symbolic people, and I'm not, I'm just telling my story. If other people want to tell their story, they could write a book, but I told it this way. And yeah, me and the baby daddy are cool, we're homies now, and I know it's a direct, it's because it's out. I'm on some new shit, and yeah.
Yeah, you're in the now. Yeah. Shout out to Gigi. We were just talking about that. One of my personal sort of joys in reading the book was the glossary of, the sort of the archetypes in Portuguese in the English translations, and I continued throughout the book. If I forgot what one meant, to go back to the glossary, and then I would stay in the glossary and try and remember things like, oh, that's right. This is, and I love that. I love that you wrote about the archetypes or used the Portuguese language, but had the glossary for people to be able to continue to like translate them as they read. And I dug that. I think that's a super cool little feature in the book.
I mean, about that too, I think I wanted to teach. I think one of my callings is I'm a teacher in everything that I do. So it's like I want, even in the book, even in the reading, like I want to teach. And I've had other people that have read the book said that they learned, how to kind of speak or understand Portuguese.
Yeah.
And I was like, exactly, like that's the point. Or Spanish or whatever, Arabic.
Well, it worked. It works. It's great. So getting back to one of the things I mentioned earlier when you talked about being hated.
Wait, did have you said that yet?
What? About
being hated?
No.
Oh, not necessarily by you.
No, but but yeah, like after I read the first draft, you were like, if you're going to give me feedback, I need it to be like raw and candid and honest. And so I told you, I don't remember saying this, by the way.
I'm like, I got the receipts.
But
it's in an email.
No, you mentioned it to me, so I don't doubt it. And you told me that I said there were parts of this that made me hate you. And you said that was some of the best feedback you received. And I just wanted you to kind of go back to that time where we had those conversations or that conversation and talk about why, that was great feedback. And I believe that if I did have strong feelings or I used that word hate, thinking about your character in the book, I think it may have had something to do with the absence of certain information I felt, just was needed about like you and the relationship with your kids. Because you created this tall boundary, this wall. And I felt like if I'm reading this story and she's a mother and she's talking about this relationship, but her kids are absent, it made me feel like you were painting yourself a certain way. And after I read the second draft, those feelings weren't there anymore.
I'm like, that's interesting.
So, anyway, back to the feedback part though. Like, why was that great feedback for you?
I can't, when I initially read it, I wasn't like, jumping for joy, being hated, especially by someone, someone that I respect.
But I hate you. It was about the character.
I
hate
you. But also too, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit.
That's right.
So, so you saying that you hated me, it's like a punch to the gut, but I'm also a martial artist. You learn from getting hit in capoeira. So it's because the thing in capoeira is like, it's 50-50. The person throwing the kick or the attack, and then the other person getting out of the way. So if you don't get out of the way, it's on you. So if you get hit, you learn from that. Like, okay, like somebody does that move, then I need to do this. I need to get out of the way faster or whatever. So for me, even though it didn't feel great, especially coming from you, I'm like, I just kind of blanked.
Sangria.
I know, the sangria is good. Being hated. Okay, why am I brain farting about this? Maybe because it is an uncomfortable thing.
And you probably didn't expect it from me either. That comment.
Because it was strong.
Yeah.
And I remember why you said you hated me. And I got the receipts.
You do?
Yes, okay. Yes. No, it was because of everything I put my kids through.
Okay.
That I put my kids through hell by choosing to be with abusers and not and staying there for long periods of time. It wasn't like, oh, one thing happened and then we escaped. It was like, no, like years of trauma and abuse of all of us, different degrees, different, and that's when you said that you wanted to hear more about my cubs, like more about the relationship as to, like almost like why would I, go, put myself through that, but also dragging my cubs along with me.
Because I knew there was more. That it was like you were hiding something, and so that was one of the reasons why I was like,
"That's the point that I was going to make." Because there was shame, and also too because the writing is a cathartic experience, and because writing the book took like 10 years. So I started writing it literally the time that I was like on the plane to go ID my husband's body. But then it was like a long process of, excavating my brain. And at the time, my brain was more disjointed. So I wasn't remembering a lot of things and, I had to go through journals or, think back.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Side note question, just popped in my head. Did you interview anyone, or was just this you and your memories? Did you talk to anybody about any of the memories or experiences or stories?
Maybe my cubs, if things like, oh, do you remember what happened?
Okay. Yeah.
Or what was your experience when we X, Y, or Z? In the book, I do have two. I would say, well, actually, no, I have like 3 letters from people that aren't me, that they were letters to me that kind of give some background
which
information.
I love,
And I felt kind of interjecting these people that show up in the story somewhere along the line. I felt I was being diplomatic. Like I didn't want to make it seem that my husband was like this complete monster. He was afflicted. He had issues, and I want people to have compassion.
You accomplished that. Like, you humanize every character. You're not pointing fingers. All these people are like real people that have their yin and yang. You know what I mean?
We all do. We're all imperfect. I mean, I know I'm imperfect, and I definitely put my imperfections out there. Thank God I'm a kind of person that doesn't really give a fuck at the end of the day. Excuse my French. But it's kind of, I'm also a martial artist. It's you or me. It's a very survival, it's a martial art. It's you or me. So I'm going to choose me to survive, and take whatever risks that come along
necessary,
with that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is on a lighter note, but it's got more to do with like the business, if you will, Hollywood. There's a film which I adore called Captain Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen, who's like one of my favorite actors, right? That is undeniably your story. They just took a man and put him in your place, and everything else is this. In my strong opinion, Captain Fantastic is your story.
I am Captain Fantastic.
Have you seen the film?
I have, and when I was watching that film,
and is that the impression that you have?
Yes.
Like it's.
But I was also thinking, I'm like, is this ego talking? And I started asking people, have you seen this film? Have you seen this film? Like, at my cubs. I told the cubs, I'm like, watch this film and tell me if I'm crazy.
They watched it?
They have not.
That's why do kids do that? Like, my cubs are the same. I'm like, you need to watch I Am Not Your Negro. You need to watch this. And it's like, you watched it yet? I'm like, whatever.
That's another book,
So
another conversation.
That's a rabbit hole to go down. Forget about it.
But definitely, when I saw it, I was like, okay, certain things in that film were so specific to my family or to my experience, and I was asking myself, like, okay, is this ego? Are these universal truths that happen to everybody? But there's like certain things.
There's certain details.
Yeah, I mean, like, how many people, you know, I don't know if y'all have read the synopsis, but I kind of mention or touch on it, but I mean, I had to exhume my husband, you know, to cremate him. So how many people have conflict with the family, like you have like beef at the funeral, like where there's drama at the funeral? The person gets buried in a way that is against all of your, you know, your wishes, against the person's wishes.
Your values, your code, your belief system. Yeah, it's disrespectful.
Like your tribal family code, and
dishonoring.
then yes, totally dishonor the deceased. And then the family goes and unearths the person and then cremates them. And then also, you know, in the film, one of the children, or I guess the mother, was it the mother that wanted to be flushed down the toilet?
I don't remember.
Okay, yes. I think
Was
the
it?
mother's wish was to be cremated and flushed down the toilet. That was the mother's wish. But like in my circumstance, one of my cubs felt that my husband didn't deserve ceremony, and was like, just flush him down the toilet, like get rid of his ashes. Like if when you read the, you know, thing when we're deciding what we're gonna do with the ashes, one of my cubs is like, just flush him down the toilet, like he doesn't deserve ceremony. And I was like, that's another specific thing. I mean, I
That's
think,
why, in my opinion.
but that's
my
why
strong
I'm
opinion.
glad you saw that.
So in that case,
And also the stick it to the man thing. Like I wrote a whole book about stick it to the man. Like that was kind of like our inside joke. And then there was like another maybe nickname that was there, and I was just kind of like, but you know what? This isn't the first time that people have taken pieces of my story. I mean, the pieces of my story have been in sitcoms, like, because I've had friends that are like writers, producers, or whatever. So there's pieces of me and my baby daddy story. Like, I won't even say the sitcom because it's well known to put out these people. But yeah, there's been very intimate details of my life in sitcoms. I've had so much stuff stolen, and that's why I had to write my own story and put it out my way.
well, I believe forgive me, but something about the old idea, the idiom, the phrase, like to be copied or stolen from or whatever is like the highest form of compliment. I know it's like not cool, but
Well, compliment me with some dollars, because here I am
of
suffering
course,
with my cubs.
But you've lived, a life of intrigue, and you're an interesting person, and you've come through the fire.
International man of
that
mystery.
that is appealing to the human psyche and soul. Like people are. That's why Hollywood is what it is. That is the nature of humanity, to sit around the fire and listen to people's stories, right?
Don't I end my
And
book
then
about the same?
take them and rehash. Yeah, take them and rehash them and reproduce them and copy them or whatever. Make it their own story. So,
But I mean, as you know, when it happens over and over and over again, where you get abused over and over and over again, and people are stealing from you all the time,
sure.
I mean, it gets like
it makes it even more critical for you to tell your version of your story the way it actually happened.
And in a way, I mean, I'm hard on myself. I'm a Virgo moon rising, and for me to be pleased is a pretty big feat.
In my opinion, the title and the cover illustration, which, by the way, if you didn't know, Luce did all the illustrations for the cover.
Like, look, they're hanging here, spinning part of our little display.
I think that the title and the illustration align perfectly with the story. For me, one of the underlying themes is the compartmentalization of love. Love of children, spouse, craft, knowledge, movement, freedom, like all these things you are passionate about, and it's like a world that surrounds each one of these things, a world of love. Throughout your journey, during the experiences, afterwards, in your mind, as you wrote, did the theme of compartmentalization ever come across your mind? Like, did you ever think of all the different kinds like all the facets of love, like everything love can be?
I think subconsciously I have a tendency to compartmentalize, especially as like having a disjointed mind, like dealing with like CPTSD, where you could be
For the
triggered.
viewers that aren't, matter of fact, I don't even know, what is the CT?
The CT is chronic, is it? Or complex, thank you. So complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So undiagnosed, but I mean, from all my traumas and multiple, like over a lifetime, like from childhood and then, it being exacerbated through my relationships, my mind kind of at the height of it all was very disjointed. And I mean, even to this day, there's like a lot of things that I don't remember and I have to like, dig deep to retrieve. But I think I have a tendency to compartmentalize certain parts of my life, not to only to protect myself, but to protect the people involved. So either protecting my cubs or protecting like my lover, like the identity of my lover. If you read the book, you'll know, like things like that. Like, and also because we've experienced a lot of community trauma, like being immersed in a community and then a trauma happens and then all of a sudden you go from having kind of like an extended family to nobody. It just made it more necessary for me to kind of like compartmentalize my life to protect myself. But I'm now at a point, I was having this conversation with Ava that I want to be whole and that I seek to be whole, and I don't want to I don't want to have like my queer community here. I don't want to have like my family here. I don't want to have my like lover or my partner here. And then, the seniors that I teach there, it's like, it's like, can't I just be whole and be all of me all the time instead of, and there's certain points where I feel like I experience that wholeness, I think, and part of the reason why I put in the chapter like rest in punk was because you said that you wanted to know more about my cubs, because that would tell the reader more about me. And I wanted to put something light in there, like let me just put something that was like fun, like a moment that like it was the most amazing night ever. It was epic. Nothing I'd ever experienced as a teen, but like I experienced this with my cubs, like it was, and my queer New York community, like it was amazing.
I also think that there's joy throughout the book. You get that especially in your martial arts practice. I think that there's an energy that's felt in the language, in the prose that you use. So it's not just, it's 100% or 99% war. It's like it's a roller coaster ride, and it's magnificent and it's heavy, but at the same time, a lot of the substance is the joy you find in your practice. And I think that's blatantly apparent in the book.
And that's the nature of capoeira. Although it emerged, from suffering, from colonization, from slavery, that's part of the game. That's the jogo, like you're playing and you're not taking yourself seriously. And even if you get hit or swipe, somebody gives you a hashtera, like puts you on your ass, you like get yourself up, you like shake yourself off. You can't take yourself seriously. Like you keep on going. And that's the beauty of capoeira. And everybody's laughing at each other. People are clowning each other. Even in songs. People are clowning each other, like in the songs. Yeah. Sometimes they change the words of the songs or just, the nature of the song. But that's what, controls and I mean, it's so much like being a DJ. The people that are on the they are the ones that control the energy that's being cultivated inside the circle. And it's supposed to be joyful. And that's why, I mean, I love it. And even after all that trauma, like I still practice.
Yeah. So because of that, I think that there is also a baseline of celebration throughout the book, too.
Well, that's good. I'm like, because, I mean, you read the earlier draft, and I felt like I felt like it was heavier, like it was kind of like a downer.
Well, the second draft, it felt like you opened up a little bit, and it's nice. It's nice to read. It's powerful, but it's not just like the whole time. It's like, oh wow, that's amazing, and I wonder what that looked like, and wow, we're in the studio. We have a new. I felt celebration like when you arrived at a place and you succeeded in getting, the Capoeira studio in New York. Like those things are like these celebrations that happen throughout the book. So there's a lot of wins too.
Right.
And there's joy. There's a lot of joy there. So
well, that's cool. Good. That's a relief.
Yeah. We do want to open it up for questions, but I have one more thing I wanted to ask you about. Wanted to talk about art and commerce. I think that it's important to talk about art and commerce for you. You're technically, as I mentioned earlier, not self-publishing. You have your own publishing company, which I just love because it's been how many years now? How are you selling your books? Where are they available? And you said something about like equitable pricing, and I'm not exactly positive what that means, and I want you to like talk about that.
Okay, so first I'll answer the part about the difference between publishing, like having a publishing company, and then self-publishing, and then all the reasons why one I think is better than the other. So self-publishing is obviously you write the book and you put it out, and you can use platforms like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and you may not necessarily have the money or the wherewithal to design, or typeset. So design the cover, and then like pick the fonts and the feel of the book or the paper. So like it's standard, they print it in China or whatever, and it's like standard paper, like it's nothing special. Whereas the concept that I was going, and also the people that printed my book, they were kind of like my blueprint. There's a worker-owned unionized printer in Brooklyn called Radix Media, and they're really dope. Like they do community work, and they make beautiful, like aesthetically pleasing books. So they're kind of like, I'm like, when I grow up, I want to be like them. So they guided me, and because I'm a newbie, and so I published, the first book that I published was not my own. It was a friend of mine's that I've known for a really long time, a disabled cat. And I've known him for a really long time, and I believe in his work and enough to put my money behind it. So with him, we split it 60-40, like we print 100 books. He put in 60% of the print cost and the design cost and everything, and then I put up 40. And then when we got the 100 books, he got 60 books and I got 40. And so that was that. So I kind of learned the ropes by publishing his book. Just about design, like what sometimes things in a concept might work in your head, but then, in paper or printing, like it doesn't work, or it'll be too expensive, or maybe it looks good on a computer screen, but it won't look good on paper. So just kind of like figuring that out, and like becoming bona fide. Because another thing is that if you self-publish through Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any other self-publishing platform, is that academia or any contests do not take you serious. Like, so you can't submit your book for, to enter contests or get grants or whatever. So like basically you are, you're like kind of screwed, like, and so that's why I'm like, okay, I don't want to take that avenue, because I want the option. Like I may want to submit it for awards, or I may not, but I wouldn't want to deny myself that and then regret it. So that's the reason why I decided to start my own publishing company, and then also the thing with the equitable prices, like it boils down to equity and making things equal. And a lot of people know that what do they call it, the literary industrial complex.
Never heard of this.
Okay, so there's something called, just like the prison industrial complex.
Heard of that.
There's every institution has its complex, has its industrial complex. Okay. So yes, they have they call it the literary industrial complex. It's not built for people of color, and especially not for Black folks. So if you're like me and you occupy multiple margins, like, you're pretty screwed, and they're not going to be, giving you deals to tell your story. And especially because mine has multiple languages, it's non-linear. There's like so many things already stacked against me that I was just like, is that going to stop me from telling my story? And I feel like I'm too grown to be waiting for any opportunities. Like, I'm not going to wait. Plus, in my mind at the time, I was like, I'm going to die. So, can you imagine if I thought I was going to die and then I was waiting, submitting, queries, waiting, like, please publish me. And then them saying no, like, your shit don't make sense, or, it sucks.
Well, you're an outlier. You are a renegade. And I think that it deserved to be this way. I think it needed to be this way for you, just for who you are, your spirit, your attitude. Like, hell no, I ain't waiting.
Right, and that's why, in the early stages, I had people that I respect, like yourself, read it and tell me what you think. So thank you, reading the early drafts. And then when it comes to equitable pricing, I mentioned it in the book, but there's a character called the poet that taught me about equity. Equity is like leveling the playing field. So I give people a scale, and they can choose to pay what they can depending on their income. Or, sometimes people, like, I don't know, some money came in, or I won the lottery, or, it's tax return time. People might have more money, whenever. So then they'll pay more. And that's what I encourage people to do. Like, if you have more, pay more. And what it does is that the people that pay high, it raises the value of the people that pay low, which makes it equitable. And also, too, because I'm selling only, so many copies, I'm selling them in the spirit of things that are collected, like vinyl. We
call that a limited pressing. Exclusive. Yes, exclusive, limited. It's like people that collect vinyl, limited pressing,
which raises the value. So
I'm sorry, I'm being too much of a DJ right now. Yes, okay, all right. Got it. Makes sense. That's great.
So limited pressing in the vinyl world, in the literary world, or in the literary industrial complex, is called a short run press.
Short run press. Mm-hmm. Love it. All right, beautiful, cool. All right, that makes sense. I wasn't aware in terms of like the equitable, like what that meant. So thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And also too, because I considered these they're works of art.
100. Yeah.
It's like the way that people, with that design in mind, I want people to have a kinetic experience with it. Like the look and the feel of it.
Yep.
Also, too, like the use of the vellum, in my mind, it's so much deeper than it like has to do with veils, veils of consciousness. My book's a very spiritual book, but so all of these things, because I published it, I designed it, like a regular publisher isn't going to take that care. They're not going to pick like the Sankofa, as the divider. And, it's a Black thing. Like, people that know, because my folks open it. They're like, oh, it's a Sankofa. And I'm like, yeah, and it's a memoir going back. So, yeah, that's...
Before we, adjourn the interview, I wanted to open up the room for questions. Anybody has any questions for the author? Feel free.
Anybody questions?
Wow, you mean I covered it? Oh, no, there he is. Okay.
Well, just, I haven't known you very long, but, strong Black woman, and I'm just wondering if you were ever concerned about, because a lot of times people want to stereotype Black people as victims, right? Like the whole sort of, and I'm wondering, in terms of telling your story and this triumph of the will and you overcoming these things, were you ever concerned about people trying to sort of put you into this victim category as opposed to like this, someone who does martial arts, who has overcome adversity? And so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Victim, I think, going back to my core, not giving any fucks. I never saw myself, or I don't see myself as a victim, but I was concerned that people might see it as trauma porn because I'm talking about multiple traumas, that I didn't want it to be that. And I think at maybe the first draft that you read, I felt that because it felt kind of heavier, like the earlier drafts, and also too, like I was grappling with my own shame and my own, like, how am I going to tell this story? Like, how am I not going to step on anybody's toes? Like, in the earlier years, and then also too, like gaining like my confidence back, like reclaiming outside of writing, that kind of helped me approach the story from different, and even like you said, lighter, like this the way that it ended up was much lighter than, let's say, the earlier versions of it, which, I mean, that's evolution. And I'm glad, like in the beginning, I was kind of like, let me just throw it up and just get it out there because I'm afraid I'm going to die, right? So in the very beginning, it was kind of like I felt this urgency and this pressure, and then people kept on telling me, like, let it breathe, put it away. And I'm like, I can't, like, like I have to get it out. And then, but then kind of like the nature of just life, like, even though I was very diligent, like I worked on it diligently for 10 years, like almost daily, like just looking at it or moving things around or like I was very, very disciplined about working with it and working on it and making it like a job. And because it took so long, just me growing interpersonally, it did change the feel of the story and how it ended up just being lighter because I personally was different, which I'm glad. And I'm glad that I took time and also too, just dealing with PTSD and not thinking that as much that I was going to die, like after 10 years, like from the initial trauma to 10 years later, like I wasn't like, jumpy and looking over my shoulder and all that stuff.
That's a great question. Because
So
so much of, what we experience as, Black people, people of color, when we're watching our stories, courtesy of Hollywood, is that those tropes and those archetypes. Like I have a good friend of mine who's also a writer in the industry. He calls them like lynchings. Like if it's the same story over and over, what are we really trying to accomplish or achieve? So that's a good question.
Which was like the trauma porn thing. Like, do I want to tell the same kind of thing like over again? But there's so many like spiritual things and mystical things that are so way out.
It's such a unique story. It's such I think when I think about his question, I think about what is in the canon. You know what I mean? As far as like popular culture, 12 Years a Slave, just on and on. The list goes on of like, can we, why do Caucasian people get to make a movie about the woman that invented the mop, when the majority of Western civilization's inventions are by black people? I mean, why can't we make a movie about the brother that invented the potato chip? But black people invented the super soaker water gun, the traffic light, like peanut butter. Like George Washington Carver, when the French decided to, when Americans and the French who were collaborating and the architecture plans for the White House were done by, I forget who the French person was, when they decided, like, we're not messing with y'all no more, we're taking our plans and we're out of here. George Washington Carver redesigned the plans from memory and then had the nerve to say, hey, you guys, you probably shouldn't have the White House on the shore. You should probably put it inland to protect yourselves from, like, shoreline attacks. Like, what are you thinking? Like, where's the movie about that? Come on. That's American history. Anyway, not to go down, please, questions for Lewis. Let me stop.
I don't know if it's necessarily a question or just like an expression of what I got from the book, but what was really like touching to me was the fact that you called it a memoir. And typically when I pick up a memoir, the person is gone. Mm-hmm. And you're here. And what was so special to me is that you lived so many lives and you were able to say, hey, right? Like when I was experiencing the book and reading the book, it felt as if I was taking a journey with somebody during these particular events, which was really exciting for me, by the way. I didn't feel trauma porn at all.
Okay, good.
Which I want to, communicate to you because I am turned off by media and a lot of mainstream books and things because it feels like repetitive history of like same pain. And when I read this book, it really felt as if I was inside of an experience that I had never been on before because it was so niche and so specific to your experience, right? So indicative to you're not a black woman, right? You're many things, right? Which really made me feel this overwhelming sense of all is one, right? Of inclusiveness, and I felt like this sense of connectiveness, like, wow, like she telling my story and she, off in Brazil, right? Like I've experienced some of these things and this was 20 years ago or 30 years ago that this woman is experiencing this at a different space and time. So it really felt like a mystical journey for me. And to have the author of a memoir who says, this is a memory. These are memories of mine, right? These are experiences that have happened to me, but they are not who I am. And I get to recreate or create a whole new life with the creator of all things. So I wanted to express how special this piece of work was because it is not a cookie cutter story. It is not the same tell-all of every struggling, strong black woman on this earth. It's like, I've been in Brazil, I'm, part Mexican, I got the experience of a black woman, I got, all of these things encompassed and embodied in this one being. I'm so much more than what you see. And I just wanted to express to you that I'm grateful to you for having the sense of vulnerability to say, hey, I'm going to not only share my story, but I'm going to allow my story to grow me up. I'm going to allow my story to say, these are things that transpired so that I could become. These are not things that happen to me. These are things that happen for me. So just an expression of appreciation for you putting out this piece of it.
Man, Gigi should have did the interview. Like, yeah, like I could not have. Yes, exactly, yes. Absolutely.
Thank you for taking the time to read it, and I think even though my story is extraordinary, I think I wanted it to be universal.
Yes.
You know, that it's all of us, and that's what the use of the archetypes is for. Is that we all have archetypes. We all have, you know, these people that are symbolic in our lives, and they're just players, and that's why, like, it's all a game. Like in capoeira, it's a jogo. Like, they're just players in the drama of your life. And yeah, I'm not pointing any fingers or whatever. You know, these people are players, and like, if they want to write their drama out, like, go right ahead. And if you want to put me, and you could even name me, like, I don't care. But yeah, it's like life is a game, and like you were saying in the beginning about, like, you know, war stories. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the title is Martial Love. Like, it's about, like, fighting for what you love. It's about martial arts. You know, I come from a martial arts family, not only just like my nuclear family practicing, but, you know, like my father and my brother practicing like another martial art. So it's you know, we're here to like fight, you know, fight for what we believe in, fight for love, in the most loving way.
Yeah.
Martial love.
Yeah.
Because if things come from a good place, which, you know, I was writing it, you know, from a good place. Like, I just felt like I needed to vindicate myself. Because, you know, and I mention it in the book about, like, the whole Me Too thing. Like, every time, like, there was, like, a new celebrity, like, telling their story and their Me Too moment, I never had my moment. Like, this is my moment that I had to give to myself because my community did not stand behind me. Like, everybody turned their backs on me and my children. So this is my Me Too moment. And I'm not saying names because I don't feel like I need to. Like, if people want to do their research and find out whatever, that's, you can go right ahead, but it didn't come from me. But yeah.
I think for me personally, and just as a parting note, I think that, I mean, what you said is just now is critically important, just for, in terms of like having your own Me Too moment. Like, it's up to you to tell your own story. It's up to you to, you know, get off that crossroads and being stuck. If you've experienced certain things, it's like you can. This book is a great example, even for me personally, of how you can take charge of your own catharsis and work through it. You know, this book is doing work. It brought you peace. Like, we're all capable, because most of us have something that we're still chewing on, or we're still dealing with, or we're still, you know, that ego and that past and that mind construct and those stories, we're still projecting it into like the now and the future, etc. And we can actually get through that and have peace. So I think that for you, as a writer and as a person that decided to create a publishing company and then decide to put out this book, I think it was brave. I think it's monumental. I think it was momentous. I think it's an incredible achievement, and I think it's inspiring, I think, at the end of the day. And as a human being, I'm grateful for you that you decided to do it. It was brave, and you're big-hearted, and it took a lot for you to decide to do it, you know? And you were diligent. Took you over a decade, and you have people you love and care for, and you just was like, I'm gonna do it. And now that you've done it, you feel better. And let that be an example to all of us, that we can, in our own way, be it a book or a journal or art or exercise or whatever it might be, like, we can as well push through, you know.
And tell your story. How you could do it any kind of way, creative, you know, performance art or whatever, your way, whatever that is. And And we, you know, as we were having a conversation earlier, like that is legacy.
Yeah. Look, we could sit here all night, and
Yeah.
I have 100 more questions for you. We've reached our time.
Okay.
So thank you, live audience. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Moonstruck and Moonstruck
Yes,
Vintage in Cleveland.
yes.
As you can see in the background, it's like just this incredibly beautiful shop. Do we know how long has it been here?
8 years.
8 years strong. So if you're ever in Cleveland Heights, Moonstruck Vintage. I think on Instagram it's Moonstruck Vintage CLE for Cleveland, right?
Moonstruck CLE.
I got this
Moonstruck CLE on Instagram. Okay.
I got this cute hat at Moonstruck.
So, anyway, thank you for everybody involved. Thank you, camera person. Thank you, audience. Thank you, YouTubers. Appreciate you. Once again, the book is called Martial Love. Luz, as in the light, Luz, Emma Cañas Madrigal. There you have it.
Thank you, everyone.